I really wanted to just back up as far as we can, as far as you allow us,
Okay.
and have a conversation with you. And I was wondering, how did you get started in the Army, in your Army career? What did that look like?
Well, I was 18 years old in 1943, and World War II was really raging at that time. And I come from a very small town on Long Island, and we had some of our boys had been killed. Some of them went in the Marines right after the fighting in Guadalcanal. We had lost two people in that conflict, and then everyone was going into service, and you had to serve. You know, the whole country was being organized, and national spirits ran very high. So I wanted to be a soldier. And the minute I turned 18, April 1943, I went to into New York City, where you would report if you wanted to join the Army or any of the services. And they had a reception station there set up in the Grand Central Palace, which was a big auditorium kind of a building in New York. And I went there and spent a day taking a physical, a very, very extensive physical. At the end of the day, you go to one more station, and the doctor looks at you and looks over your records, and the information gathered that day, and said, okay, you're either 1A, that's general service, you can do anything in the service, or you're 4F, you're not fit for military service. And I fell out of a tree when I was a youngster, and broke my arm, and I lost some of the elbow. And I had kind of a stiff arm, but I was very active in the outdoors. I'm a fisherman and a hunter and things, and it was country living. And he said, you know, that arm of yours is going to keep you from being A1. I'm going to have to put down 4F. I'm sorry. And so he stamped the folder 4F, shattered me completely, and I went home. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to get a chance to serve in World War II. And so then, now I got one more chance, and maybe I can be drafted, because the draft was going full blast then. So I went over to the local draft board, and I said, I just turned 18 years old. I didn't tell them about my day in New York, and please draft me. And they do it. There's a call up every month, and I said, please call me up next month. Well, it took actually 2 months, and on June 15th they called me up. And I had to go back into New York, same station, same routine, same examination, and no one ever said a word about my arm. I even went to the same doctor at the exit sort of briefing, and he said, "Well, you're okay for A1. You're A1," and he stamped A1. He said, "Now go over to those 3 doors," and there were 3 doors there, 3 rooms, U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine Corps, and U.S. Army, and I wanted to be a soldier. I wanted to be a Marine at first because we had lost Marines, and they were doing a lot of fighting in the Pacific. So I went over to the Marine door. It was the close of the day, and there was a big sergeant in front of the door, Marine sergeant. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I want to go in there and be a Marine. He said, I'm sorry, we only take 50 a day. So I was turned away from the Marine Corps. And well, the next best thing, I guess I got to go to be a soldier. So I went over to the Army door, and the door was open. Mm-hmm. And I walked in. And they said, you want to be a soldier? I said, yes, I do. He said, okay, we'll take you and come back here in a week, and we'll get you out to Camp Upton, New York. And that was a reception station, and we'll get you in the Army. But in the meantime, we'd like to swear you in right now. So I took the oath of being a soldier, and then that day I became an American soldier. And they said, well, you could go out there tonight if you want to. We have one more train load going out to Camp Upton tonight if you want to go. I said, I want to go. So I went out to Camp Upton, and the next morning they gave us some uniforms out there. It's a very famous old fort reception station during World War I. Went back to the old days of Irving Berlin and writing songs like Someday I'm Going to Kill the Bugler, you know, and all those great songs. They made a musical about the Army. at that time. But anyway, I was at Camp Upton, got my uniforms. The next day, got a few lessons about who's an officer, who's a sergeant. Here's what a sergeant looks like. You salute the officers, you don't salute the sergeants. And the following day, I was supposed to go to another station where they decided what branch you should go into. And I had worked a few summers from high school with the Corps of Engineers. They were building an airport near our town for the U.S. Army. And so they said, you should be an Army engineer. And about that time, I thought, okay, that sounds pretty good. But I looked up on the wall and I saw a picture of a paratrooper. He was just landed, he was furling his parachute, and the boots looked nice, and the uniform was very special, the jumpsuit. I thought, I'd like to try that. And I said, I want to be a paratrooper. And they said, you want to go airborne? I said, yes, I do. They said, airborne on my folder. That was the end of the interview. And the next morning, I was on a train going to Camp Toccoa, Georgia. And we rode all night. The next morning, we arrived at Camp Toccoa, Georgia. And there was a couple sergeants waiting for us to get off the train. And the first thing they said, well, there were about 10 of us, 15 of us getting off at Toccoa. And that was a very famous camp. That's where the mini-series, the Band of Brothers, that 506 Parachute Regiment started there. So anyway, they said, before we get on the truck and go into the camp from the railroad station, drop down and give us 25. I didn't know what 25 was. He wanted 25 push-ups. So he had to show us what the push-ups were. And then we did 25, or tried to. Got on the bus and went into Camp Toccoa, and they had a 34-foot tower there, like the jump school has at Fort Benning. And there was a man there, a major. He was a major, and he was interviewing every soldier who went up there. You had to jump out of the 34-foot tower, and then you run over to him and take off your harness, and he would say, "What do you want to be a paratrooper?" You had to give him some kind of an answer. And I told him I just wanted to, I like the uniform, I like being a paratrooper, the idea, and so forth. He was my battalion commander. He was 25 years old. Everyone was young. All of us were 18. And all the sergeants were probably maybe 19 or 20. They had just been there with the 506, they were cadre. And so he said, okay, fine, you're going to be in the 517th, 2nd Battalion of the 517th Parachute Infantry Regiment. And then we started training. We did our basic. They formed the 2nd Battalion, and people came from all over the country. It was quite an experience for a country boy, and met other young men from everywhere in the country. And we had one or two regulars there, regular Army soldiers who had been in the Army before World War II started. Few came from Alaska, and one of them kind of became very famous. He was killed later on in France, but he had just come out of a stockade for stealing the colonel's vehicle up in Alaska and wrecking it while he was drunk. But we used to always call him Alaska, and he was kind of he was kind of an oddity in this company because everybody was a draftee, or they were volunteers and airborne, but they were draftees, and he was the only regular kind of guy we had to go to war with us. But at any rate, he had been in a stockade, and it was quite common to offer a reprieve from stockade duty to if you want to be a paratrooper. Right. And that's how he got in our unit. But anyway, we trained it. We took our basic training together. We took our advanced infantry training together. We never did any details. People who quit and didn't want to stay in the unit, they just have different ideas. This might be a little bit too rough. They were just kept behind for a while before they were released from our Camp Toccoa. They did all the details. I never did any KP or any details. All we did was train. Very serious, hard training with the officers and great NCOs, great officers, and did that all together. And then we went to Fort Benning as a battalion, and we were a pretty hard bunch then. And we never lost a man in jump school. Everybody in that battalion went through jump school. And on a field right in front of the headquarters in Fort Benning, we were living out there in tents, and the day we got our wings, our silver wings, we also were promoted to PFC. We were private first class in the battalion, and which was a very important moment in my life because I had my wings and I was promoted to PFC. And then we went down to Benning, and we went to Camp McCall, North Carolina, which was a very large airborne base near Fort Bragg. They had 2 divisions there actually at that time, and 3 airborne regiments. That's how many paratroopers were running around at Camp McCall. And we were there then we did our advanced unit training, which was very good, and had a great graduation exercise with a regimental parachute drop, and Air Force came in, and there was no Air Force, that was U.S. Army Air Force. But they dropped some bombs for us and showed us how the air element could support the ground element. Very interesting training. And we were sent to Tennessee that winter for some advanced maneuvering with a division size airborne. That was the 17th Airborne Division. And very bitter cold, wet, muddy, cold, and just rough weather in the mountains in Tennessee near Murfreesboro. And then we got the word in the middle of the night, I guess, we were taken off the exercise, sent back to Camp McCall, North Carolina, and we were going to go to overseas. They wouldn't tell us where, but they did need a airborne regiment, infantry regiment right away, parachute regiment. And then we found out we were locked in, you couldn't go anywhere, and we were going to Italy. They had to go over to Italy. So they took us out of that division, 17th Airborne Division, and we then got ready to go overseas, some more training back at Camp McCall, and then went to Norfolk. And from the Norfolk harbor, we went overseas to Italy. And that's how I got started in the Army. Now, I was with that unit the entire war, Italy, France, Belgium, Germany, and same unit, same company, and so we were together for a long time. And I still had the same colonel. He was now a lieutenant colonel. He was the youngest colonel, battalion commander, parachute battalion commander in Europe at the time, in World War II. 26-year-old colonel. His name was Dick Seitz, and then we went through the war. I mean, we were in the Battle of the Bulge, and we were actually where they had the big airplane crash just recently in southern France, in the Maritime Alps. We were right in that same area. From August, we jumped there from Italy, got on airplanes in Italy, a town that we had taken, and then dirt strip, and the C-47s took us to Italy from there. And we jumped into France, and then we ended up on the French-Italian border, the Maritime Alps, above Nice and Monte Carlo, and we were there until late November, and then the war was going to be over then. It looked like we had finished, the war in Europe. It was about to end. We thought the Germans were defeated, and we went to not Soissons. Anyway, went to Soissons, and near Paris, and they were going to select one of the airborne regiments. Didn't know which one yet. They had all the airborne assembled there around Paris, and they were getting ready to pick one to be the President Eisenhower's personal bodyguard or guard in Berlin. But look, the war was going to end. And then in the middle of the night, now it's December, getting ready for Christmas, going to be picked, who's going to be the sharpest outfit to be picked to be General Eisenhower's honor guard. And all the Berlin celebrations for the big victory in Europe, and they said, hey, something's happened up in Belgium. The Germans made a big attack, and we got to get up to Belgium right away. So we took us two days and 2 nights driving in trucks, open trucks, in the middle of the winter up to Belgium, and that's how we got into the Battle of the Bulge. And we were still fighting then into January, and then they took us back to France, and we were getting ready to jump the Rhine River. We were going to make that drop, and that was canceled. We stayed in the camp there for several weeks under the wings of the airplanes with our chutes and everything, but they couldn't drop us across the Rhine at one particular place we were going to drop, our drop zone, because the tanks were, the Patton's tanks were already there. The war was really going fast, fumbling very fast, the German resistance. So then they were going to drop us in Norway, and Denmark first, to accept the surrender of the Germans there, and that didn't turn out. And then the next thing you know, we were back in France again in the camp waiting to go home. It was May and the war was over. And they said, well, there's only, in my company, there were only 8 people eligible who had been back in Toccoa when we started the war. And you have an option. You can either go up to Berlin and join the 82nd Airborne, which has been selected to be the honor guard for General Eisenhower, or you can stay with the regiment. It's going to be assigned to the 13th Airborne Division, which had not been in combat, and they're going to go to Japan. And so we hung around at a camp there near the coast for another month or two, and then they finally got a ship. There was just not enough ships to take all the people home from Europe. And we finally got a ship, and then on the way home, halfway back to New York, and I forget the name of the ship that we were on, but they dropped the nuclear bombs in Japan, and there was no requirement for us in Japan. So we went to New York, and we went home, and they just let us stay home for a while because they couldn't get people out of the Army fast enough. And they would put broadcast on the radio, national radio, and say, if you're in a certain group and you just left Fort Dix, that's where we were, Fort Dix, don't come back, just stay home. We'll tell you when to come to Fort Dix to be discharged. And in October, I was discharged, and I was back in Long Island, and for over a year I was back, and then I was in the reserve. I joined the reserve because they were going to try to start an airborne unit in New York State. In the reserve, and I wanted to stay airborne. I love the airborne. It was the greatest thing that happened to me. I love being a paratrooper. Everywhere you went with the uniform on, with the jump boots and the hat patch and the little parachutes and the silver wings, people just really treated you so nice. It was a great national spirit within that war. It was a great effort, and the whole country was just enthralled with what had happened and how everybody had come together as a nation. And I really missed the Army. I liked the armies. And my father died when I was very young. And I missed that airborne. I missed that kind of a relationship. So I joined and I went back to the 82nd Airborne Division. And I was in it at Fort Bragg, back being a paratrooper. I liked that. And then I had the good fortune. I mean, it was wonderful being back in the Army. And they had great people who had stayed in the Army, great NCOs. They had all been in the airborne. There weren't too many units for people who liked adventure and excitement. So they all gravitated to the 82nd or the 11th. There were two airborne divisions kept. One was in Japan, 11th, and the 82nd at Prague. And so you had all the ex-Rangers and Merrill's Marauders, and airborne, First Special Service Force, all those people who had been in those kind of units in World War II, and they were NCOs, had gone to the 82nd or the 11th Airborne. So you had some wonderful talent and combat experienced people, and the officers too. And so it was really great to be there. And the 82nd was America's Guard of Honor, and we did a lot of good, exciting things. And I had two very good first sergeants during that period. One was Maximilian Trujillo, and the other one was Orlando Campisi. I'll never forget them. And I had a very good captain. I forget his first name, but his name was Alan, and he loved his company. And in those days, the captains didn't make very much, and he was always betting almost every nickel he was paid on one of his company teams. There was a great deal of intramural sports in the military then, and everybody had boxing teams and football teams, and they had events like guard mount, daily guard mount, and they would pick the best-looking soldier to be the colonel's orderly, and he didn't have to walk a post. And it was a great contest between the company commanders whose soldier would win colonel's orderly. And we went through a great effort. The whole company would make sure this guy's rifle was clean, and his boots were shined, and his uniform was starched. And we went far out of our way to make sure if we had the best looking guy go out in the field, they had to be inspected by the officer of the day. He would pick the best looking one. We even went so far as if you had a starched trousers, we'd carry him out to the parade field. We wouldn't allow him to break the crease that was pressed into his pants, and they'd hold him by his arms, two guys, and they'd lower him into his boots, and they'd lace his boots for him so he wouldn't break that crease. And then you had a lot of questions to ask. To answer, the officer of the day would ask you all these questions. Who was the sergeant major? Who was the first sergeant of the company, sergeant major? Who was the deputy commander of the division? All the chain of command. You had to know that. You had to know your general orders. Just seven or nine general orders. Had to recite that perfectly. I mean, they really went to great. Your clothes had to be stamped with your right serial number. Even your handkerchiefs, they would challenge each other. Big deal. But he would bet almost his monthly pay on his guy winning the the colonel's orderly for the guard mount, or his football team, or his boxing team. But anyway, those three said, we want you to go to OCS. And they helped me get all the college qualifications, take some college equivalency tests, so I would qualify. You had to have 2 years of college credit to go to OCS. And I finally got that, and I got to OCS, and I got to be a second lieutenant. And I graduated from OCS out of Fort Riley. There was only one then, just like they have here now at Fort Benning. It was a branch of material. It was a 100-man class. They were only required to graduate 50%, and then so many would go infantry, and so many would go field artillery or engineer or quartermaster, whatever. And naturally, I wanted to go infantry because I had always been infantry. And so I got to infantry, and I graduated in 19 May, and you know what happened in June? The Korean War started in 50. So, and we were told at the time, don't worry about buying fancy uniforms out of the $250 clothing allowance you get if you graduate. Be better buy fatigues because we're going to let you work a lot, not play a lot. And so be better buy more fatigues. And and you're only going to get 2 years of active duty as an officer, second lieutenant. You might make first lieutenant. Maybe, but that's all you can guarantee. And then you got to go back to being an NCO again. And of course, North Koreans, they changed all that because the war went on for a little bit longer than that. And then in 1953, I was a captain. I had already made captain, which then took about 10 years. Before that, took about 10 years. So I was a captain. I was over to Korea twice. I was a platoon leader in the 187 Airborne Regiment in 50 and 51, and then I went back to the 82nd again for a few months, 9 months, and I went back to Korea again because I wanted to be a rifle company commander. I thought that was the greatest job in the world. And so I did. I went back and I was in the 17th Infantry of the 7th Division. I commanded A Company of the 17th Infantry. So that was my second trip, and I was there 52 and 53. I came back, and I came back to Fort Benning in 1953. And I checked in with the adjutant there, or the personnel people at the main post, and they said, "Go on out to Harmony Church, and we're going to make you a ranger." And I said, I didn't know what it was. I said, "Well, what is that? What's going on out there?" They said, "Well, they got a course out there, a ranger course, and you're going to go out there." I was the captain, and so I went out to the ranger department, and Ralph Puckett, he was the first lieutenant there.
So what are rangers? What are rangers? Who are rangers?
Yeah, well, it was a special unit, I met one ranger just before I left Korea, and he was getting ready to, he took the company over from me, and he was asking me all these questions about, he was going to take them, they were going to go on a patrol that night. I was now, the last couple months, I was the S2 of the 1st Battalion of the 17th Infantry in Korea. We were by the Chowan Valley, and very active area, and patrolling every night. Every night patrols going out. In fact, you had to have a combat patrol out. You got that every 3 days, and you had to have recon patrols out every day. Every company had to have them out in the front of them. So, a lot of patrolling going on, and so the captain who had taken over my company came to see me as a 2, and he was asking me the most pertinent questions I've ever heard anybody ask. Before he took his unit, sent his unit out to the Chowan Valley, and I said, an awful lot about patrolling. Where have you been? He said, I just finished this new course called the Ranger course at Fort Benning. That's the first I'd ever heard of it. But when I got to Benning, I really didn't know much about it. But here I am going out there. So I did go out, and I was a captain there for almost 3 years, training Rangers. And that was one, I loved it. I loved every bit of that. That was really good training. And it was, and because they had good people there. You had to be a captain. You had to have combat experience. Most of those guys were World War II veterans too, like me. And they were probably enlisted men, most of them. We had a few that were officers, famous officers. But we wouldn't take anybody else. And then later on, my last year there, I guess, we took a few first lieutenants in, which really surprised. Ralph Puckett, he was there as a first lieutenant because he had done so well and so famous in what he did fighting. Wonderful leader in Korea, but he also had been wounded, and he couldn't walk any of the problems. He was a training officer, and gave a lot of classes, but from the post itself, the camp. But at any rate, he was the only one we had. It was unusual to have a first lieutenant. You had to be a captain. And I loved what I was doing. And we worked all the problems down in the Florida camps in, because we didn't have enough officers down in Florida, so we went down and worked all those problems between classes. And then we would do half the classes in Dahlonega in the mountains. You went to Florida first then, and then up to Dahlonega to the mountain, get the mountain training. We had great camp commanders. One of them was Bull Simons, who was a very famous soldier. And we had another great major out there, up there in Dahlonega, who had been with the 1st Special Service Force as a first sergeant, a very famous fellow, who took the lead bridge going into Rome over the Arno River as a first sergeant. He charged a company of Italian who were still fighting us with a Tommy gun, and he was so ferocious in his approach across the bridge with a couple of soldiers that they all ran away from him, and he was famous, and so he had the camp up there. It was all country up there. There were a lot of stills around then that were active stills. We had to watch out at night on patrols because there'd be stills working at night, producing liquor that they would take down Atlanta and sell. And there's all dirt roads out there. They lived in tents temporarily in the summer, and in the mountains they went down, in the winter rather, they went down to a 4-H club that was active, and we'd live in those buildings. They would close it down. We took rented it from them, but we would live in those log cabins, and they had a bigger building for a mess hall, whatever. Pretty primitive, but we were training officers primarily, captains and lieutenants. We get the West Point class. That was a big event for us of the year. And we had a lot of captains there. Everybody wanted to get the Ranger tab, and it was hard training. And it hasn't. I don't think it hasn't changed one bit from what it was then. I mean, they've pretty much maintained the same sequence of training operations. They now go to Florida last, I guess. But other than that, it's the same course, and the standards have always been the same standards. I mean, they were tough. It was a tough course.
How do you define what a Ranger is?
He's a super infantryman. He's a super infantry soldier. I mean, he knows how to patrol. He knows all the tricks of the trade. If you read the books of the exploits of Rangers, you know, in the French and Indian Wars, Robert Rogers, Rangers, the things they did, you look at his rules, Robert Rogers' rules, and the Ranger Creed, or what we teach Rangers today, it's almost the same. It's the same doctrine, you know. It's the same rules of how you fight and what the unit should look like and the conditions they should have, or be expected to fight in and be successful in their fighting. And they were expert soldiers. Survival. They know how to survive in the wilderness on minimum support, and they knew how to patrol very well. They knew all the tricks of the trade, and fighting Indians and fighting the French army in the French and Indian War, and what happened in the Civil War, and then what had happened just recently with Darby and his Rangers in Europe, fighting in Italy, and then later on in the mainland, and what they did over in the Pacific. They had a reputation for just being superb infantry soldiers.
Why are Rangers necessary?
Because I guess their standard keep it. You know, they keep the standards high. You want to be a super soldier. You want to be a real combat soldier and know your trade. you got to go to the Ranger School. You got to have a Ranger tab on. And it hasn't changed one bit. I mean, and they're the same kind of people today. You see it here. You see it here all the time. These people are here now for the best Ranger competition. You know, this has gone on now for 32 years. I don't know if anything has gone that long, you know, in the Army. If some training thing that happens, something you do, some ceremony, a ceremonial thing. There's a lot of mystique attached to being a Ranger.
What do you think the special potion is, I guess, in making it something so significant to the point that it's lasted for 32 years? What's that special blend that Best Ranger has?
I guess if you like being a soldier, you like the military, you like a military career, you realize you have to have done that. You know, you don't have to win it. You just have to have that experienced what you had to do when you tried it. And if you try it, you learn so much about yourself. I think it makes you a different person, a better person. It's like people go to Ironman. Why do they go to the Ironman? Well, it's nice to go and say, I did the Ironman. And I did that. I went to Hawaii and I did it. I thought I was in pretty good shape and I thought I could handle it. And I went there and I proved to myself that I could handle that kind of a challenge. The mental and the physical stresses that it places upon you. And this one goes, and the Best Ranger thing goes beyond that a little bit. It's not just a physical capability, it's the mental things you have to know how to do, and do fast and do well, proficiently, effectively, lethally, and some of it. You know, that's what it's all about. It is lethal. It makes a lethal soldier out of a man. So, and the young soldiers, you know, if they know now, the reputation is out there. You know, if your squad leader or if your platoon leader is a Ranger, got a Ranger tab on, he knows what he's doing. He's been trained well, and what he tells me to do probably makes sense. And he's looking out for me, and that's important for the morale of a unit. I mean, it's got to be a morale booster.
We were both listening to speeches today,
Yeah.
And people repeatedly said that it's the best life insurance policy.
It is. It is life insurance. Yeah. Oh, I mean, if I had a son, you know, in the military, and I did. I mean, I had him in my own brigade in the 101st Airborne in Vietnam. He was a Ranger, and then he joined the Ranger company with the 101st. You know, and you were with elite people. You know, things that should happen in combat are going to be done properly, and because of that knowledge and that capability and that confidence. It's a powerful thing. There's a mystique to it. You know, how many soldiers' lives have been saved over the years in the wars we've been in recently? You know, we've been doing a lot of fighting in the last century, and we're still fighting today. But how many lives? How many boys have come back home alive who were infantrymen? Up close and where it's really bad, come home safe and sound because there was somebody around who was a Ranger. You know, an NCO or an officer was present in those situations that knew what to do, the right thing to do, and still get on, do the mission too, which saves lives in the long run. So it's very, very powerful, and we can't capture that with a computer. But we know darn well, and we listen to those, like you say, listen to those speeches today. It did save lives, and it does save lives, and it's saving lives while we're probably speaking right now.
What are some of your memories of Ranger training, or your time at the Ranger Training Brigade? Was it called the Ranger Training Brigade?
No, it was the Ranger Department then. It was a department. Well, I recall, it gets challenged once in a while. People who don't know really have a feel for what happens in a rifle squad or a platoon or a company in combat. They have a hard time realizing or appreciating what Ranger training means to the soldiers in that tense moment. And it gets challenged every once in a while about the people who do the budgeting business. How much does it cost to to get a Ranger through the course, or a man through this course, to make a Ranger. And I know I was present when we had a wonderful Colonel Keller, Jerry Kelleher. Kelleher was a great soldier, and in the 1st Division, I think he had 3 Distinguished Service Crosses and 8 Silver Stars. He commanded companies in vicious fighting in North Africa. He was wounded. He came back. He was in the 104th Division, the Wolfhound Division, the Wolfhead Division, in the Hurtgen Forest, some of the most vicious fighting in World War II in Europe. And he commanded that division, a regiment there. He commanded a regiment in Korea, 35th Division, a regiment of the 25th Division. Famous infantry colonel, and we learned more from him. But we did have a class in session. He would get us together and get out his little book from being a company commander and read some of his tricks of the trade and notes that he took. But at any rate, he was being questioned by a 4-star general, and I happened to be in the room that day in the headquarters here at Fort Benning. And the 4-star general asked him what it did cost to send a Ranger through. When they were thinking about stopping it, let's let the units do it around the Army. We don't have to do it at Fort Benning in a special course. And the general asked him, what's the cost to send, he was a good general too. What's the cost to send a man through this course, Jerry? And Colonel Kelleher said, well, I could tell you that if you can tell me what a soldier's life is worth. And the general said, that's a good answer. So, but and they did it again another time. They did it when I was here, really. I guess when I had the Ranger Department. I was at Ranger Department. I came back and I got the Ranger Department as a colonel. And they were going to take it away again, but we had just come back from the Vietnam War, and they were thinking about how we're going to cut back, and it might be a different enemy as the Cold War was about to begin, with the Russian threat, nukes and nuclear weapons and all that. And maybe we can cut some corners here and some cost, and what saved us was there was some resistance to the Vietnam War, from our country. You didn't have that swell, that groundswell of whatever, like I experienced as a young man in the World War II. But at any rate, they decided to try some different things, some novel things. They thought it was novel, and they weren't novel. They were really good. But that was have an ROTC course, get the ROTC folks when they were juniors in college, because they lost some ROTC support during the Vietnam War. They weren't too popular on the campuses, and so we had a couple of those go. And we did 4 when I was there. We did 2 years of it. 2 every summer. We had, and we were going to summer to their big camp. They came here, and we had a 200-man class. We had 200 of the brightest, toughest ROTC students in the country come here and go through the Ranger course. And they were youngsters, and it was a great success. It was a screaming success, and they did very, very well. And then they went back to the campuses as seniors, and they all organized their own little Ranger companies or Raider companies or battalions, or they had little units, but it was sort of an elite unit within the ROTC group that was still in existence in the college. And they turned the whole feeling about military on the campuses around. They had a lot to do with that, because these people really were proud to wear the uniform. They did great things. They were both good students as well as good ROTC cadets. And it did a lot to bring ROTC back into some degree of acceptance and respect on the campuses in America. And the Army realized that, and they didn't keep it up. They didn't keep that going. For some reason, I thought they should have, but they didn't, because it was such a payoff for us. I meet a lot of them today. They'll be here at Best Ranger as doctors and CEOs and things. They just want to come back and see the events. Or they've just been very successful in whatever they did the rest of their lives. It did have a great effect on their life. It was probably the defining moment of their life. And it certainly was for me and many others that are still in uniform and around. And you heard some of the numbers today, where they are, who commands the divisions, who runs the Army, really. A lot of Rangers in some very key spots. But at any rate, they changed their mind and they kept the Ranger Department, thank goodness. But the ROTC thing did a lot toward keeping it alive and well. And then it just got better and better and better as we went on.
And when were you the commander of the Ranger Department?
I was here in 1970. I got back in 1971. I was in Vietnam and I commanded the battalion, a brigade in the 101st. I got back in 1971 and I was here 73. I was here for almost 3 years. Yeah. I was a director.
So in all the years that you, or all the time you've spent in the Army, there's been a significant amount of changes. What or how has the Army evolved from your perspective?
Well, I think, how's it evolved? Well, I think it's very favorable as far as because the Rangers are concerned. It is really, I mean, I know as a brigade commander in combat how vital it was to have Ranger officers and NCOs. I applauded when we brought, the NCOs didn't go to those early Ranger classes or courses. That was a later thing. They were brought in, which was one of the smartest things we ever did. I mean, and then having a Ranger regiment, of course, and the wonderful things that they can do and do all the time. I guess one of the most significant things, is that the whole special operations effort or organizational awareness in the Army has grown larger and larger and larger. That you need people like this to do things in this world that we're in today. Some of the things have changed. There's still a great threat from a few nations that would come after us, perhaps, or we would have some conflict of interest, and that would go back to a sort of conventional land warfare again, almost like World War II again, because there's some big armies out there that we could have to fight. But the value of having units like Rangers and people commanded who have been through the Rangers course, they're invaluable in this current world. And the equipment they have is probably the most modern, sophisticated equipment. I mean, they get the best of everything. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The best weapons, the best communications, the best vehicles, the best everything is available. I can make you more lethal on a battlefield. The Rangers get it. They get it first, and they should, because they're the ones that are going to be in combat first, probably, or maybe the only ones that are going to go to combat, because they could maybe end the situation so quickly. There's a special value to having them.
Speaking to that, again, there's a lot of talk of when you go to Ranger school, you learn about yourself more than anything else.
Yeah.
So what is it that makes a Ranger at that kind of point of embarkation? What is it that you learn about yourself that makes you a Ranger?
Well, there's a course in existence. There are several courses. I don't know all of them now, but in fact, Ralph Puckett, when he left the Army as a colonel to join a friend of his who was involved in Outward Bound. And Outward Bound is a very popular training device that's used by industry. I mean, the major corporations in America have sent their executives, or the ones that are future executives, to Outward Bound. Outward Bound is like a Ranger course. The only difference is, I used to say, it's a Ranger course, but you don't carry a rifle. You're doing exciting things. They got all the zip lines and the rappelling and the rafting and who's leadership. They change the leadership of the group, and they have to do all these various challenging leadership development exercises, build something or move something, large weights, or build a house. Or they do all various means they use to develop or to evaluate leadership capability. Who can take charge? Who can take charge and make a difference, and make the right decisions? So Outward Bound, when I had the Ranger Department, I sent my lieutenant colonels, my camp commanders, my couple of my executive officer, I sent them I sent them to Outward Bound. Because I always said the Ranger course is Outward Bound, but now you're carrying a rifle. And you have a rucksack. And you've got that little bit added to it. But what you're trying to do is develop people who have confidence in themselves to take on something that looks like it's unsolvable and solving it. That's important. It's important in a squad, it's important in an industry or in a job somewhere. I don't care. It goes with you. That's why they do so well when they get out of the service. And they become CEOs of major industries, or the industries gobble them up because they're valuable assets.
Do you ever have to counsel somebody that maybe had a lack of motivation or was not quite making it, and you saw something in them? What would be your words of guidance to kind of keep them in the game, so to speak? You ever have to counsel anybody that way?
I guess I have. I guess I've counseled a lot of people, probably. I certainly, yeah. I guess that they wanted to quit, particularly if they were successful. They were doing fairly well before they came. I mean, most units won't send anybody unless they send them. They think they got a good chance of making it through the course. And now most of the military knows, the Army knows what to expect. I mean, they're not any great surprises. You're like, are you in shape or not? You better be in shape. Mm-hmm. And that shouldn't be a surprise, because you should be in shape back in your home unit. I mean, we would hope that everybody could come here from the infantry, regardless of what unit you're in, and have a good chance of becoming a Ranger. And if not, then there's something wrong with your program, your training program, your PT, or the leadership of the organization. I mean, I'd be embarrassed if I sent people there and had a reputation that none of them from my division or my brigade or my battalion ever make it. I don't think I'd be around very long, because there's somebody up there wearing a Ranger tab above me who's probably going to remove me, because I'm not doing very well with that organization. So I think it's probably a thermometer of what's going on back home and what's going on when he gets here. I mean, why should a man come here and flunk? Why should he flunk the PT test the first couple of days? That, to me, is unbelievable. I mean, if we have a certain standard in the Army for PT capability, a test, and you have to sign off on his application to come to Fort Benning, why should he come here and flunk the test? Where's the disconnect? That should be a red flag that goes on back home, I would think, I would hope. But you can talk, sometimes people would come in and they would come in and say, I just graduated from West Point, I think I want to quit the Ranger course. I would call him in. If I thought that maybe there's something more here than maybe it's not his fault. Maybe there's something going on with the family. It's a morale thing. You don't know what happened. And you want to find out, because you think this person's salvageable. And I'd call. They would call me. They would call me in and try to talk them into, hey, let's get through this thing. You can do this. Don't quit. We don't want them to quit right away. We don't want to embarrass anybody, intimidate anybody. That's not the purpose. That's always my philosophy. When I take my unit out to run, I don't want to run them so far that half of them drop out on the way. I don't want to embarrass them. I want them all to cross the finish line. I'd like them all to cross the finish line together. Look at the symbol we have now. It's become a symbol for the best Ranger. It's those Rangers running across the finish line. They got their arms locked, and they didn't want to actually go. How did it start? There were 10 of them, I guess. There were 5 teams that were going to make it. They didn't want to embarrass anybody, so they locked arms. They all crossed the finish line at the same time, holding their rifles up. That's great. I mean, that's our logo now. those guys crossing the finish line, because that's that Ranger spirit too. I mean, as far as comradeship, camaraderie, teamwork, it epitomizes everything that we do, and that's what Rangers do. And the furthermore that you can spread throughout the Army, the better the Army is going to be.
Back up for just a second, because I just want to make sure. I ask you about this. I understand you have the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the third award.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means a lot to me. It means a lot to me because the infantry badge came out during World War II. I got my first one in Italy. We had to have 30 days in combat, and they were pretty strict about it. And then we got the badges. And then they gave badges out in Korea, another war, and I got it for Korea. And then they gave them out in Vietnam, and I got one for Vietnam, and I have 3. And there's only been about a general. When I was commanding Fort Benning, General Crozen, Fritz Crozen, nickname Fritz. I don't know his first name. That's embarrassing, but Fritz Crozen, great general. He has 3. He has 3 combat badges. And he's still around. He's still around with his 3 badges. The Army only gave out, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood. He wanted to know how many. Well, we did a little research. There's about over 300, 350, somewhere in that neighborhood. 353, a combat badge with 2 stars on it. That means 3 wars, and that's all they give out. Somewhere over 300. How many are still alive? I don't know, because you had to be in World War I to start off with. So we're getting fewer. We're becoming an endangered species. At any rate, we did. So I'm very proud of that badge. I'm really proud of that badge because I'm one of the guys that's still around that wears it. So it is my favorite badge and award.
Well, thank you for sharing. What is the legacy of Rangers, would you say?
Well, I just being a Ranger is really a great honor, and it's a group of folks. I mean, you can see it when you're together with a bunch of if you're a Ranger. I mean, it's a cult, but it's a healthy cult. It's a real healthy cult, and it's one that is very powerful. I mean, there's so much of this you saw it today. I mean, and it goes through. It runs in a family. It's a family, really, but it's also a real family. I mean, the father, son, and grandfather. You know, we have a picture here of my grandson getting the Ranger tab, and my son is here, and I'm there. But I mean, what a great thrill that is to have that picture. That's just, there's 3 of us and 3 generations of Rangers. It's a very powerful thing, and I can't explain it. It's a mystique. There's a Ranger mystique that's alive and well in our Army. It's always going to be. I mean, you'll see it here this week. We have this Vice Chief of Staff of the Army who wears a Ranger tab. He's going to be here. And we have the new Sergeant Major of the Army who wears a Ranger tab. He's going to be here. And then all the folks in between, the commander of Fort Benning, and the Chief of Infantry, they're all Rangers. They're all Rangers. And so we'll all be together here this week for a few days.
is the best Ranger competition?
Well, it started out when I was commander here. There was a fellow, I heard about a gentleman who's a very wealthy real estate entrepreneur in Florida, and involved in, I guess, mall building malls here and there and everywhere. But he's a great admirer of the Army and what it's done over the years for this country. And he had selected, and this is a good selection, and a good place to do it, he had selected a drill sergeant of the year out at Sand Hill, out where they have the one station unit training, where we train all our infantry soldiers in basic training. And he had developed an award for the outstanding, maybe of several drill sergeants. And it was called, it was named after someone he knew, some colonel he knew, who had been a remarkable infantry colonel in World War II, I guess. I'm sure that's true. And I went out to meet him, because it was going on. The award ceremony was going on. I went out and had lunch with him out at the training center. And I was really impressed with him, and I thought he was doing a wonderful thing for the Army and for the infantry. And I certainly endorsed what that award meant. And that was generally it. But I met this gentleman, and his name was Richard Leandri. Richard Leandri. And he loved doing this. He liked to do this, and so we became pretty good friends. And I encouraged what he was doing. But we had talked about ranges, and I got him to see a ranger. I guess got a ranger briefing, and he saw a ranger graduation or something like that. I don't know what it was. But then at the time I was leaving, I was getting promoted. I was going out to take command of the 6th Army out in San Francisco, and I left. But I had two colonels. One commanded the airborne department then, and the other had the ranger department. And when I left, it wasn't my idea. These two colonels got together and said, we're going to have a competition for the best rangers. And I guess they got with Leandri, and Leandri said, that's a good idea, I'll endorse that. And he formed an organization called the Chairborne Rangers. They even developed their own patch. They had a patch for the Chairborne Ranger, and these were wealthy Floridians, really. And it started with those folks, and they're the ones that did it. The first one was, then they planned one, and they wanted to name it after me, and they did. I mean, that's a great honor to me. That wasn't my idea. But they did that, the two colonels. I don't know if they're both alive. I know one, Gene Hawkins, is gone now. He passed on. And the other is, I can't pull the name. You're going to have to do that for me. But anyway, he had the Ranger department. Those two got together, and they did that. They put that together. They started the best Ranger. And I was gone. I didn't go to the first best Ranger. It was only done by the Ranger department. And that meant the 3 camps had participants. But it was done in the main post. And my wife, she came back from California to do that. I couldn't do it. I was just taking over that Army. But I made every other one. I made 31. This would be the about 32nd one. I made 31 of them. And it's gotten better every year. I mean, there's more people supporting it, and there's more people attending it. We've talked and it's convinced everybody ought to have people here. And every year now, we always have every unit in the Army, combat unit in the Army is just about here. And if they can be, a lot of them have been away they're in combat. They're over in Iraq or Afghanistan the last few years, say 13 years. But at any rate, and this year, most of them will be represented. And they'll have teams here. And some of the special units, special operations units, and the Ranger Regiment and the Ranger Training Brigade, 75th Ranger Regiment, rather, and the Training Brigade, they'll have people. We'll have about 50 teams, 100 men, 100 of the best soldiers in the United States Army will be here to compete.
You've kind of alluded to this, and when we were doing the book a couple of years ago, and I got to talk to a lot of the former winners, it was amazing how important and influential the Best Ranger competition was on their lives.
Yeah.
And they're very open and honest about that.
Yeah.
Why do you think this competition is so important to the competitors?
Well, they're certainly all very proud of what they've accomplished before they even come here. But they know it's here. You know, it's another challenge to them. I mean, they came here in the first place because they knew there was a Ranger course, and they knew that there was something. If you're a soldier and if you're a combat soldier, if you really want to be one, it sure helps if you've got the Ranger tab. You know, and so they wanted to do that. Then they hear about the Best Ranger competition. Now, who's really the best Ranger? Then it really gets to be challenging. To these kind of people, these are special folks. And they're special kind of folks that are going to be winners no matter what they do. If they never even came in the Army, they would have been winners. And but they want to stay, they like being a soldier too. And if you're going to be a soldier, you want to be the best soldier. And it's just logical that I'm going to come to Benning and I'm going to show them that I am the best soldier. Those are the kind of people you're dealing with. And it's not just, you know, and I'll tell them tomorrow morning. It's not being the winner. It's just doing that. It's like Iron Man. It's like Iron Man. It's like escaping Alcatraz. It's like the 100-mile run in Virginia. You know it's there, and it just bugs the hell out of you that you haven't tried it. They're the kind of people that want to try it. And it pays off in industry, and it pays off in the U.S. Army. You know, this. I can take a risk. You're not a gambler. You're not a wild person. You're not going to get anybody hurt because you're reckless. You're going to do a job that you're told to do, which is a nasty, dirty job. And if it's a military one, it could even end up, you know, losing people's lives, including your own. And you're going to do it right. You know, you're going to win. You're going out there to win. You're not going out there just to play. You're going out there to do what you're told to do as a soldier, but you're going to do it right and you're going to save lives.
What is the significance of some of the events that are in the Best Ranger competition?
Well, you know, you certainly have to know how to use weapons. I mean, that's what you've got weapons for. I mean, you have to. Sometimes you have to kill people. And that's part of being a combat soldier. And so you better know how to do it well and quickly and with some efficiency. And you've got the best equipment in the world to do it with. You better know how to optimize that ability. So shooting's one of the big ones. So they shoot. You need to be a strong person. It's not an 8-hour job being a Ranger. You got to go without a few meals and a few days sleep. So you got to be in shape. You have to be tough, strong. You got to carry a load. You got to pull somebody back who's wounded, under fire maybe. So you have to be able to do that quickly and efficiently. So those kinds, you have to be in excellent shape. You have to be a kind of a person that takes good care of his body that the good Lord gave him. You know, one year we had the Best Ranger team on the Good Morning America show, and I forget the lady's name now. She was a renowned person on talk shows, but anyway, she asked them, "What are you guys?" Because that was about the time the movie Rambo came out, the first one. And she asked those two sergeants who had won that year, are you Rambos? Do you consider yourself Rambos? And they said, no, ma'am, we are not Rambos. We're military athletes. Which meant they really were in shape. They took good care of their bodies. And that's the number one essential. I mean, you will make it through a day here if you're not in shape and taking good care of your body. So they do that. And that's part of it. And you have to use parachutes. You know, you have to do things with helicopters. You have to do things with demolitions. You have to take care of your buddy if he gets wounded and save his life on the battlefield, because you're the first guy that's going to be with him, is your buddy. And so you got to stop the bleeding and keep them, from going into shock. And whatever you've got to do, you've got to do it quickly and do it efficiently. So you have to know a little bit about battlefield first aid, battlefield casualty, getting them back to safety, getting them out of the fire, whatever has to be done to save their life, you have to do it. You got to be those are the kind of things you have to do. And you have to do it for over a period of time without any real decent food and without any decent rest. And you might find that it's going to be kind of cold and wet and nasty while you're doing it. I mean, you're exposed to nature, Mother Nature. So.
Do you believe that the Best Ranger competition has made an impact on the Army overall?
Yeah, I really do. I really do. I think that it's made an impact certainly on the units. Not only the units that are represented here, it has an impact on them. It certainly must have an impact back on home. Like last year, the 2 lieutenants won from 25th Division. Mm-hmm. Now you know darn well there's 2 platoons in that division who know they're being led by 2 good lieutenants, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't think the other lieutenants in the unit are trying to emulate them? I think they will. I think they do. And so it's a virus. It kind of spreads in the unit back home that they know that Sergeant so-and-so has been in Best Ranger. He's tried it twice and he won it the last time he did it. And you heard some of those people, they tried it 4 times and they finally came back and won. Mm-hmm. Messerschmitt was one of them. Mm-hmm. It's going to have a great effect. I know it has on the senior people around, the brigade commanders. And
you believe it's helped with recruiting?
I think so too. Yeah, well, I think we get some great help from the media, and getting that on ESP and Fox. We had Fox last year. I think that did a lot of good for the Ranger image. Yes. Yes.
Well, kind of just wanted to close with, what do you believe the future of Rangering is? What do you think the future is?
I think it's stronger than ever. I think it's better than ever. I mean, we do things that you don't hear much about, Candyss. I know darn well if you're going to get a new rifle, or you're going to get a new radio, or you're going to get a new ration, or you're going to get some new techniques or some new equipment in emergency medical support in the battlefield, latest technology on blood transfusions and ways to prevent infection and all that business in the medical world. The place to really evaluate it is to let the Ranger unit evaluate it. Mm-hmm. If they think it's good, if it works for them, it's good for the U.S. Army. I mean, those kind of people, the combat development people, they must really, this is the place to really evaluate something new, see if it works, if it's worth putting the money into it or whatever. Or we need that. I think that helps the whole entire Army.
And what do you think the future of this competition might be?
I hope it goes on forever. I think it goes on forever, because I think it's a good thing. And I know that's a kind of a virus too, because I see now they have Best Medical. The medics are they do it. They emulate us. Mm-hmm. Who else is doing it now? Engineers are doing something now. In fact, the whole Army, they have a kind of best soldier or best whatever. That's all positive. That's all positive. But still, the postgraduate course, the postgraduate course in all this is the Ranger course. Mm-hmm.
I said I had heard through the grapevine that you were a pigeon handler.
Yeah, for a short period of time. And I first got in the Army, and at 517th at Camp McCall, I was in a communication platoon. We were training, you know, with the radios, and we had some pretty crude radios. We had a lot of cavalry stuff because they looked at the airborne in those days as the old cavalry. They like the new cavalry. Instead of going out there with a horse, they go out there with an airplane and a parachute, and they land behind the lines and they do deep reconnaissance, and they can make a raid somewhere real fast on the horses and get back. So we had radios that the Cav used to have. They had big long stakes on them. You hooked them in the stirrups, and you could, when you did, they were on a staff, and in the middle was this round bowl. They didn't work very well, but anyway, they had this radio here, but this thing in your stirrup, and you could ride. So once they have the guy jump with this damn thing, and then you would run around, you set it and stuck it in the ground. But at any rate, they also had pigeons. They still had pigeons. They only had pigeons. The Signal Corps was responsible for the pigeons. They always had, on a big post, they had a loft, a pigeon loft, which is like a chicken coop. And they had the pigeons in there. So we got pigeons. And you were a T5 if you were the pigeoneer of the battalion. And so I said, that's an easy way to get to be a pigeoneer. I mean, to be a T5. And I'll get some promotion here. So I volunteered to be the pigeoneer. And I got the job. And it was great the first couple of months, and then we went on our first big exercise with our pigeons, and you could either tie them to your risers, your harness, and two little vests went around the pigeon zipper, and he'd jump with you tied to your harness, or you had a little basket you could throw out first. It had about 6 or 8 of them in the basket, and if you could lucky enough to find it on the ground, once you got on the ground with your parachute, he didn't go with you, or they didn't go with you. But anyway, we went on a big exercise, and see, the last 3 or 4 pages in the old message writing book, used to be made of tissue paper, and that was, so you could write the message on tissue paper, roll it up like a cigarette, and put it in a little tube that would fit on the pigeon's leg. So we made this battalion drop out in the cotton field somewhere down there near Camp McCall at night, a night drop, and the colonel, the battalion commander, I was with him, and he says, go get your pigeons, and bring them over. We're going to send a few messages back to the regiment. And so he wrote a couple, had them look a few messages, rolled them up, put them in the little tubes on their legs, and we threw. We had 2 pigeons, I guess, but throw it up, and it went up in a tree, and it landed in the tree, a big tall pine tree. And we got another pigeon, and made another message, put it in the thing, send him up. This guy went up in the tree and joined his buddy up in the tree. And then we're out there in the dark trying to find stones, and it's hard to find stones in the sand hills of North Carolina at night. So we usually had most of the things we threw were pine cones. And we were throwing pine cones and trying to get those pigeons to leave the tree, and they never did leave the tree. They wouldn't fly anywhere, so my colonel said, that's the end of that, no more pigeons for me. So I could see there was no future in being a pigeoneer, so I requested that they take me out of that job, and I'll carry a radio for the colonel, and not pigeons.
And you said that was an actual MOS? That
was an MOS, 516. 516 was the MOS. They had a manual on pigeons. And pigeons have done a lot of good things for the Army over the years, and they're still useful. I mean, I still believe in them. I've seen things they could do since then, but carrying messages. And we know we have some heroes that are pigeons. The one mounted pigeon in the Pentagon that saved the lost battalion in World War I. He got back and he was wounded on the flight, and I mean, they've done courageous things for us. So I don't write off pigeons ever, but there was no career in it for me, unfortunately. Very fortunately.